Have you ever felt like you weren't alone in your own home? Maybe you heard a sound, maybe something felt slightly off, but you convinced yourself it was just your imagination. That's what Lisa thought too, until the night she discovered the truth. Lisa was a college student living alone in a small apartment. At first, it was just small things. Her shoes weren't where she left them. Her food seemed to go missing. She blamed it on stress or forgetfulness. But then, one night, she woke up to a soft, rustling sound. Half asleep, she dismissed it, until she noticed something strange. Her closet door, which had been shut before she went to bed, was now slightly open. Lisa's breath hitched. She stared at it, trying to convince herself the wind had moved it. But she felt something, a presence, a feeling deep in her gut that someone or something was in there with her. Lisa reached for her phone and turned on the flashlight. The bright beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the closet. Nothing. She let out a nervous laugh, scolding herself for being paranoid. But she still got up, walked to the closet, and quickly shut the door. She even wedged a chair against it, just to be safe. The next morning, she decided to set up a small security camera in her bedroom, just for peace of mind. That night, she fell asleep feeling a little safer. But what she saw the next morning shattered her sense of security forever. Lisa opened the footage on her phone, fast-forwarding through the night. At first, nothing happened. Then, around 3 a.m., her blood ran cold. The closet door creaked open ever so slowly. A thin, pale figure with sunken eyes and tangled hair crawled out on all fours. It moved unnaturally, silently stepping toward her bed. It stood there, watching her for several minutes, before crawling back into the closet. Lisa stared at the screen, paralyzed with horror. He had been in her apartment the whole time, living in her closet, watching her sleep. She didn't pack, she didn't shower, she didn't even call the police. She just grabbed her keys and ran, and never went back. How long had he been there? Days? Weeks? Lisa never found out. But sometimes when she sleeps in her new home, she still wakes up in the middle of the night, feeling watched. If you hear something strange tonight, maybe, just maybe, you should check your closet. Story 2. The Vanishing Hitchhiker. It's late at night. You're driving down an empty road, headlights cutting through the fog. Up ahead, you see a figure, a lone hitchhiker standing still in the darkness. Something in your gut tells you to keep driving, but curiosity, maybe even guilt, makes you slow down. What's the worst that could happen? Jake didn't know it yet, but stopping was the worst mistake of his life. Jake had been working late at the diner that night. The roads were deserted and his eyelids were heavy. He just wanted to get home. But then, in the distance, he saw her. A woman in a long white dress, barefoot, standing completely still by the roadside. She didn't wave, she didn't move. She just stood there. Jake slowed down and rolled down his window. "Need a ride?" he called out. The woman lifted her head slightly, her hair shifting just enough to reveal pale, lifeless eyes. She nodded slowly and got into the back seat without saying a word. The air inside the car felt colder now. A strange, damp smell filled the space, like wet earth after a storm. Jake glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She was staring straight ahead, her hands resting neatly in her lap. "So, where are you headed?" he asked, trying to shake off the unease. She whispered a street name. He recognized it. It was near the old cemetery on the outskirts of town. Something about her felt wrong. Her dress looked damp, clinging to her thin frame. Her fingers were unnaturally long, resting stiffly on her lap. But the worst part, the temperature inside the car kept dropping. Jake turned up the heat, but his breath still fogged up in the air. He glanced at the mirror again, and his stomach lurched. The woman was now looking directly at him. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. He gripped the wheel tighter, his pulse pounding. Almost there, he muttered, trying to stay calm. But then she spoke. "You shouldn't have picked me up." Her voice was hoarse, like wind rustling through dead leaves. And then she was gone. Jake slammed the brakes. The seat where she had been sitting was empty. No sign of her. But as he turned his head, his blood ran cold. The car window right next to him was covered in a layer of condensation, and drawn into the misty glass was a single word: run. Heart racing, Jake floored the gas and sped away. He didn't look back. He didn't stop. He just drove, gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. When he finally got home, he locked the doors, shut the blinds, and sat in silence, trying to make sense of what had happened. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe he was just exhausted. But when he got up to go to bed, something made him freeze in place. On his kitchen table sat an old, yellowed photograph. It was a picture of a young woman wearing the exact same dress as the hitchhiker. But the photo was old, faded, edges curled from time. And at the bottom of the photo, in scratchy, handwritten letters, was a date. October 12th, 1978. The same date as tonight. The next day, Jake went to the local library, desperate for answers. He found an old newspaper article from 1978. Local woman found dead on Highway 47. The picture beside the headline. It was her. Jake never took that road again. But sometimes, late at night, when he's alone in his car, he swears he can still hear her whispering in the back seat. Story 3. The Whispering Boy. Children have wild imaginations. They talk to themselves, invent stories, and even create imaginary friends. But what if those friends aren't imaginary? What if there's something else? Sarah thought her son, Tommy, was just like any other 5-year-old, playful, curious, and a little mischievous. But when she started hearing him whisper at night to someone who wasn't there, she realized something was very, very wrong. At first, it was innocent. "Who are you talking to, sweetheart?" Sarah asked one evening as she tucked Tommy into bed. Tommy grinned. "Jack." "Oh, who's Jack?" "He's my new friend," Tommy said matter-of-factly. "He lives in my closet." Sarah chuckled. It was just a phase, she thought. Kids made up imaginary friends all the time, but then the whispers started. One night, Sarah was passing by Tommy's room when she heard it. Soft murmuring. She paused. The door was slightly open and she could see Tommy sitting up in bed, whispering. "You want me to do what?" he asked. A pause. Then he giggled. "Okay, but only if you promise to play hide-and-seek with me later." Sarah's stomach tightened. "Tommy," she called, stepping into the room. Tommy snapped his head toward her, eyes wide. "Mommy, you scared Jack." She forced a smile. "Sweetheart, there's no one here." Tommy frowned. "He doesn't like you saying that." The room suddenly felt heavy, the air thick and suffocating. A shiver crawled down Sarah's spine. She turned to the closet door. It was slightly open. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. The baby monitor would pick up whispers, low, distorted voices that sent chills down Sarah's spine. Toys would be moved in the middle of the night. And then, one morning, she found deep scratches on the closet door. "Tommy, did you do this?" she asked. He shook his head. "Jack did. He said he doesn't like being locked in." That was the last straw. That night, after Tommy went to sleep, Sarah grabbed a screwdriver and took the closet door off its hinges. No more hiding spots for Jack. But at exactly 3 a.m., she woke up to the sound of crying. Tommy was sitting up in bed, tears streaming down his face. "What's wrong, baby?" she asked, pulling him close. He hiccuped between sobs. "Jack says he's mad. He says you made him homeless." Then Tommy looked up at her and whispered, He's in your room now." Sarah felt her entire body go cold. Slowly, she turned her head toward her darkened bedroom. The door was wide open. The hallway light flickered. Something was standing there, tall, too thin, its arms long and unnatural, fingers stretching like claws, its head tilted at an odd angle, watching. And then it smiled. Sarah's body reacted before her brain could. She grabbed Tommy, bolted down the stairs, and ran straight out the front door. They spent the night in a motel, and the next morning, Sarah called a priest. He came to bless the house, walking from room to room, whispering prayers. But when he reached Tommy's bedroom, he stopped. He turned to Sarah, face pale. "This isn't a ghost," he said. "It's something worse." Sarah didn't ask questions. She packed their things, grabbed Tommy, and never looked back. They moved to a new city, a new house. Everything seemed fine. Until one night, months later, when she heard Tommy whispering again. She rushed into his room, heart pounding. "Tommy, who are you talking to?" Tommy turned, his face eerily calm. "Jack found me again." And then the closet door creaked open. Click. The nightlight went out. Imaginary friends. Most of the time, they're harmless, a child's way of making sense of the world. But sometimes there's something else, something waiting, watching. So the next time your child talks to someone who isn't there, listen carefully, because you might not be the only one in the room. 3 stories, 3 warnings. But in the end, do you really believe you're alone? Tonight, when you turn off the lights, when your house settles and the shadows grow long, listen closely. Do you hear it? The whispers. Good luck sleeping tonight. And remember, some doors should never be opened.